Well, I guess it's afternoon now. Good afternoon, everybody. It is Saturday, May 4th. May the 4th be with you. People have been saying that, and I was just like, oh, that's so cute. I know I've heard it before. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. I'm not going to lie. It's not one of my favorite things. I am more of Avatar. I am more of Marvel type atmospheres, I guess you want to say, like Wonder Woman and you know, that side of things. I'm not so much of a Star Wars, all that, but um, I know a lot of people who are. So may the fourth be with you if that's what your thing is. It is 12:10 in the afternoon on Saturday. I'm coming on here completely different. Excuse my hair, y'all. I haven't even gotten dressed yet today. It's Saturday. I don't care. It's one of those chill days. I'm actually going to get my hair done later. I am 48 years old. And like most of us, we suffer with the gray hairs, right? And so I have my hair dark, but because I have it dark and I have grays, I'm finding that I have to dye my hair more often and it's costing me more money to have to do that. And I said, okay, I need to figure out a better way to financially do this. I mean, yes, I do it from a box. I don't go to a salon. I used to. I used to go to a salon. I have a person who did my hair for over 7 years, and my head was like her playground. And she was just like, hey, that kind of thing. But if you look back on my Facebook, I have gone through many, many hairstyles, pixie haircuts, different hair, platinum, dark. I mean, you name it. I have gone through a rainbow of things as far as my hair goes. But as I'm getting older, obviously, you want to still be young and sassy, but you need to recognize, I guess, your age at the same time, if that makes any sense to you. And so, I'm going lighter. And so I'm going to go to a strawberry blonde or whatever. So that I don't have to dye my hair as often, and the gray can kind of blend in. And then I'm going to start to go towards my natural color more of accepting the grays in my life, basically. You know what I mean? Coming to that side of our age group. Being 48, and so 50's coming around the corner, and I go, okay, some things are going to start to change. You know what I'm saying? And I'm aware of that. And I'm also, I am very much of an open book. I'm going through premenopause, and so my hormones and everything are just like this all the time. And so having to control that and have the right vitamins and eat correctly based on my, where I'm at as far as my physical goal, but staying healthy and fasting with God. And so there's just a lot of things that are changing for me hormonally and that are going on and that I have to work through, especially so that my emotions don't do this with it. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't look like such a crazy basket case, because I'm a woman, and that happens with us a lot, doesn't it? Anyways, my meaning was I'm coming back on here differently. You guys know that I write in my journal, and I don't really discuss the things that are in my journal because that's between me and God, or, those are my private thoughts. Those are expectations. Those are goals. Those are things, that God and I have talked about that I would like, if it aligns with him and it's his will, that I would like to see what happens. And so there's more specifics to that in my journal. However, God said, hey, I need you to write this down. And I went, okay. And so I started writing. And when I finished, he goes, I want you to share this. And I said, really? And if you are watching my journey, it's become all of our journeys. I think we've pretty much have started to establish that it's looking much different for all of us now, isn't it? And we're all seeing different perspectives of things. We're all having a better understanding. Our hearts are softening in some areas. We are, forgiveness is happening. Restoration is happening. I know that not everybody who watches me on YouTube is on my Facebook. I have a personal Facebook, and so those are my close and personal friends that I share more deeply with and I share things with, but we share with each other, and I'm seeing their growth, and I'm seeing ministries grow. I'm seeing families grow. I'm seeing marriages being restored, and I'm just going, go, God, go. Like, it's absolutely amazing to watch what God is doing as I continue to share the things that I'm learning in my journey, and being open and vulnerable enough to share those things that have happened in my life that I now can help others with, which is the whole purpose of what God does. We go through pains. We go through things for a purpose. And it's God's will, if we align our hearts correctly with him, that everything we went through is for a purpose, is to help others, is to, and so, everything that I talk about is biblical. I just don't throw the scriptures out there because I don't know them by heart. And so it's not that I don't know the Bible. I'm just not a Bible thumper in that way. And I use that word very loosely to a lot of different people who understand on different levels my journey and our journey and what's going on. And I try really hard not to be religious in that and be respectful of other people's beliefs. But when you start to learn other people's beliefs, you start to understand that they're pretty much the same. We just call him by many different names. And it is biblical. And they talk about that in the Bible, that he has many different names. But you find the core, you find that their values, you find that their morals are pretty much the same as ours. But through religious abuse, I guess is the word that I want to use, we put a border up that shouldn't have been put up in the first place. And so we are learning different habits and we are learning different things. But this is also a personal journey. And so you learn about yourself and you learn about healing and you learn about your boundaries and you learn about what you do and don't want in your life. And that is acceptable. And how does that look leading a Christian life and leading with God and having those morals? And for those of us who do try to live biblically, how do we do that in the world, yet don't drown ourselves and don't become enablers? Because a lot of us are givers and we're empaths. And so where is that boundary and how do we do that and don't destroy ourselves and don't destroy the good in our lives? And that's kind of how my journey has been presenting itself in many ways. And we're seeing that. Spiritually, we're also seeing a whole different realm that's happening. And I have flowed and promised to do the best that I can at the abilities in my knowledge of where I'm at spiritually and what I'm learning and where I'm growing, to share that and be vulnerable enough that it looks crazy, that it looks unstable, that it looks unsure, that it looks like witchcraft, that it looks like this. And so there's been many, many terms that have been used, whether you want to look at that positively or negatively, it depends on your perspective. And that's a lot of what I talk about in my journey, is your perspective and looking higher and going, God's ways are higher than our ways. So how do we look at that differently spiritually? How do we see things on a deeper level and have a better understanding of people? And that comes with communication. That comes with speaking their language. And those are the things that we are talking about along our journey in all of this. And people are now practicing that. They're using that. They're reading the Bible differently. The words on the Bible are coming at them. The verses are coming at them differently. They're coming at them deeper. The Bible is alive and people see it differently based on their journey and where they're at and their understanding and their perspective. God can speak to anybody in it. But going back to my journal, he said, I want you to be vulnerable enough to speak what I'm telling you in real time, because I want them to see what may happen next. And it's not going to look the way we think it is. And it's not going to be, because God's ways are higher than our ways. And it always happens suddenly, or it always happens in a way we never thought it would. And that's the glory and the wow and the amazement of God. As we can have 50,000 ideas how we think this is going to go or how we want this to go. And it is completely different than we ever thought. You know, I go back on my journey and talk about how I wanted to live the RV life, and it is nothing like I thought it was going to be, nor is it in a place that I was going to be, but I wanted to live in an RV on the lake, but I had a total different expectation of what that was going to look like, and here we are a year later of me living an RV life, being isolated, finding that I have giftings and I have things that are coming out, and that I'm being vulnerable enough now to do that. And it's a very scary place to be in when you're doing it in front of other people, and it kind of like being in the public eye and doing it that way. So bear with me as we go through this. This is my first time ever reading something in my journal when we don't know the outcome, but knowing that God is in it. Okay. And it's very quick, and I'm not going to be on here for very long. We're going at 10 minutes. So give me about 15 minutes of your time, and let's see where this is going to go. If I'm going to be vulnerable enough to start sharing what's in my journal, we've got to see if it comes to pass, because this is us going, okay, God, I'm going to test you just like he tests us. And it tells us in the Bible to test him. And so we're going to test this And we're going to see if we are aligning our hearts with God and the expectation that God has. And are we coming from a place of humility and humbleness, but of an expectation of knowing that who we are as a child of God and what he says we deserve, not what we think we deserve. And there's a big difference in that. But that's a boldness and a confidence that you have to walk in with God in this. And you have to trust that the people who are watching you and the people who are listening and the people who are growing and the people who are learning, that they're seeing it with different eyes and they're understanding where this is coming from, of a more humble place, because they knew your journey. And they knew where you were before, and they know where you are now, and they go, this has to be of God. Because I know her, and this is really weird. and that's a way to look at this. And so you, depending on the perspective of how people saw you and where they've seen you in your journey, you look completely different. So if you're new and you're watching me for the first time, you're going, what the heck is she talking about? You're absolutely okay with that perspective because you don't know me. But there are many people who do know me and who have watched my journey. And so they look at this completely different. And there has been a big thing about, do you really hear from God? And is God real? And is this all real? And going into the New Testament in a different way, and the westernized religion that has come in, that a lot of this stuff doesn't get believed in our culture and in our side of the world. But there are many that are out there but are being debunked, and they're being this, and there's a lots of sheep's and wolves clothing, and the sheep's and wolves clothing have really taken over the perspective of who God is in so many different ways. And a lot of it are they're doing it for money, or they're doing it for something different. And you have to go into it looking at it differently. And so if you're looking at the wealth transfer as far as finances, that's where you're already going to fail. Your wealth transfer that you're looking at should be more of the harvest, the people that you're bringing in, the people that are coming to God. That's the harvest. That's the wealth transfer. That is God saying to you, wait till you see what I do next. That's the glory of God. That's the miracles. That's the blessings. That's what the Bible talks about. But when you are looking at it at a financial gain, or you are looking at it for how many followers you have, or you're looking at it with a different expectation that comes from ego and pride, or comes from something that you are looking, then you're not being humble in what you're going to next. You are looking at it for a personal gain. When you go into something, you should look at it the expectations of, how am I affecting other people? What is what I'm doing going to help other people? How is it going to help other people? But how is it going to benefit me and my healing and my learning? How am I going to grow? What am I going to learn from this as we go? Because I am not holier than thou. I am not special than anybody else. I am willing to learn. I am willing to be taught. I am willing to teach and be teachable. I am willing to listen to other people's perspectives. I'm willing to understand their points of views on things and go, okay, I understand why you see that. So now let me explain to you why I see it this way. And then you come to an understanding and you come to a communication because you were willing to listen to one another. This is all God. But we have been so controlled and so mind manipulated in so many things in the world that the perspective looks so much different on so many ways. And we are kind of going and trying to catch up to this and trying to understand the process of what God is doing in all of this. And so this is where I am learning that I am ahead. God has shared knowledge with me. God has shared things with me that people are not prepared to know about yet. And if I don't slow down and I don't let people process and I don't let people catch up, that everybody's going to miss the point on earth as it is in heaven. You're going to miss when we all come together. If I don't slow down and explain things as we go in a way that hopefully a broad band of people can understand. This is what Jesus did in talking to the masses. But in order to talk to the masses, you have to know the masses. You have to know your audience. You have to know your team. You have to know who you're talking to. You have to know one-on-one the personalities of who you're talking to and read the room that you're in. Did you see how many different levels I just spoke to you in? But all meant the same thing? Wherever you're at and your journey made sense to you. Physically, mentally, and spiritually. This is aligning things. And I'll go deeper into that at some point. I'm not supposed to. And so I'm supposed to stop right there. And that's something for you, food for thought. I am learning that we can lead them to water, but we can't make them drink. Correct? Well, how do we do that? What do we do in this when we're not Bible thumping, when we know the bigger picture, we know what God can do, but we want to save them so bad that we become too much and we push too much and we become a lot because we are pushing it down their throats for them to understand something that's not yet for their journey to understand. But when the time comes and when they're ready, God will present it. Maybe this video that you're watching of me isn't in real time. Maybe this is a year from now that you're watching this, but God has shown you it now because you're in a time and a season where this can help you. Maybe you come across a sermon. This happens to me all the time. I'll read and I'll be on YouTube and I'll cross and something new will pop up and I'll go, that must be God trying to show me something. I talked about in my last video that I am financially trying to set myself up differently. Because I'm not great with money, and I will be completely honest, but there's a lot of us out there that aren't. And it's not because we don't want to be good with money. We were just never taught right how to be good with money. And so that was not something, and we were in survival mode. A lot of us, like I was a single mom, and I lived on welfare, and I lived on benefits, and I lived off the state a lot. And I probably could have made better choices to get myself off the state, but I was trying to better myself, so I went to school full time. And I lived off the grants in order for me to go to school, but I never finished. I started something and again, started something and never finished. That was the story of my life. I would start something and never finish, or I had too many projects and I was overwhelmed and I never focused or honed in on one thing. Because I was never balanced enough in my life to do that. I was all over the place. So I never stopped enough to heal something, to work through something, to have a better focus and a better clarity, to start aligning myself. And as you go through my journey, and as we're all going through this journey, we're realizing how to align. We're realizing to be still. We're realizing the boundaries. We're realizing what this looks like, what this means as we're going through this. Instead of being in a constant circle and going like this and looping around in the same thing and going in the same hole and digging around and going deeper into the hole, we are all starting to figure out, how do we do this circle of life, yet how do we go higher? How do we do this? Everybody talks about doing it, but nobody shows how to do it. No one says, I get the Bible. No one says, I get the verses, but how do they relate to me? How am I supposed to do this if you go, you don't know me. You go, you don't know my situation. You're not living in my shoes. If you're watching my journey, I've been in your shoes. If you are watching my journey, I have been on both sides of everything that I talk about. I have seen it in a dark place, and I am now seeing it in a light place. We are the church. We are the proof. The Bible is our God. The Bible is our guide to learn how Jesus did it and how he heard from God. Everybody has a purpose on earth and in heaven. If you are willing to go spiritually higher and you are willing to learn more, you are willing to grow more, you are learning and willing to humble yourself to be taught something, but when they have to come at you in a loving manner for you to receive it. But you have to know how to communicate with them for them to receive it. This is where experience comes in. This is where you have had to go through something in order to know how to explain it to somebody else. I went on way longer than I even anticipated. Let me get to my point of this, because I can just keep going forever. I'm sorry, you guys. God is so intriguing to me, and everything that I'm learning, I just go, holy cow. That's like my big thing is holy cow. All right. I wrote this today at 11:57, and right now it is 12:29, and I came on at 12:10, or I don't even know what time I came on. So this was written as real time as I could possibly explain it to you. So let's just kind of go through what this says, okay? And this is not just for me. Understand that this is God speaking for all of us, but we can internalize this for ourselves, where we're at in our journey. So when I say to you, this is what God is speaking to me, I am not trying to tell you that God is telling me something for you. This may or may not be for you, depending on where you're at in your journey. That is not for me to decide, and that is not my job. And I am not holier than thou to say that I can speak for God for you. I want you to really understand that going into this, because there's a very, very big misconception that people think that they can speak for God and you for them. God could only speak to you. But there comes a part in your journey where God can speak for the masses, right? Look at Jesus. Jesus spoke to the masses. And he heard from God and he spoke to them. And every single person that he spoke to in person or one-on-one, or the disciples as they went through him on this journey, every encounter was different. Everything that Jesus did was for the greater good, depending on how you looked at it. So when I come to you and I'm reading this to you, this resonates to you in your journey somehow. And I don't know how, but there are some personal things that I am throwing in here that I am praying out, that I am manifesting, that I am asking to align with God's will, because I know that what God is showing all of us can really help a lot of people. It's a new perspective on how to approach this in our world, in our era, in our time, because the Bible is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, but the approach looks different. It's nothing like we've ever seen before. It's different. It's a different perspective because it's based on the world we live in now. In the Bible times, they didn't have the distractions that we do now. There wasn't as many sheep's and wool's clothing back then as there are now. So we have to approach this differently on how do we show God and how do we discern in the most corrupted world we've ever been in. We're at the point where this, for years, we've been watching the slow leak. We've been watching the air come out of the balloon and the helium come out of the balloon, right? Well, we're at the point now that this bubble is bursting. This bubble is about to pop. The air is running out of the balloon. It is what it is. It's in front of us. The devil is standing right in front of us and everybody can see it. And what are we doing about it? Are we ignoring it? Are we feeding it? Or are we going, not today, Satan, I don't have time for you. Not today, devil, this isn't going to work. I don't know who you think you are, but that's not correct, and that's not lawful, and you are breaking the law, and you can't keep breaking in the law because this is absurd to me. Do you get the difference in how levels and where we're looking at this? This is where you look at the Bible differently when you look at Revelations and what's happening in the world. God is talking to the masses. He's talking to the world in Revelations. He is not talking a one-on-one, but you can look at Revelations one-on-one depending on where you're at in your journey. But if you look at the Bible as a whole, if you look at the Bible big, Revelations has a whole different view to it when you go deeper with God on a bigger scale. And that's not to scare you, because we're protected. We are under God's wing, and I want you to understand that. This is where the the sheeps in wolves clothing put fear in people when they talk about the world and everybody has to go run and get toilet paper. Go back and look at COVID. Did COVID destroy you? Or did you get through it? I didn't take a shot. I didn't get the vaccine. Families came together. We were forced to be at home together and not out and about in our athletics and not running around and going through the drive-thru of McDonald's and eating horribly and running amok and being too busy. God made us be still during COVID. He took something that was horrific that we have never experienced, we have never seen in our lifetime, and depending on your perspective of that, depends on the outcome on how you survived COVID. This is crazy. I didn't even know I was going to come on and talk like this. You guys understand that, right? This is God. COVID opened up a whole new way for the world to communicate. Churches went online. So let's shut down social media. Let's shut this stuff down because now they're talking to the masses. Now they're going bigger. Now they can reach more people. We've got to shut that down because the more people they reach, the less control we have. The more they're going to see as we cross countries what's really happening. The more that this is going to be exposed, the more people are going to hear the truth. That's deep, y'all. So where are we at? Did we die because we didn't have the vaccine and all of those who went and ran out and got a vaccine that you didn't know about? I know a lot of people who are getting sick from the vaccine. I know a lot of people who have regrets from getting the vaccine. I also know a lot of people who got sick from COVID and either died or they survived but have a lot of side effects to that. So either way you look at it, whether you took the shot or not, you had side effects, didn't you? You had pain. You went through something. But for those of us that got COVID and survived, we have a testimony of that, don't we? Did you spend more time with your family? Did you get to know your kids on a more basis than through text messaging or them being on their phones sitting at the kitchen table? Because that's all they had at this point because they've lost social contact in any other way but social media. So TikTok and all those other ones started to grow and things started to grow, social media. But again, so were we. And when I say we, I'm talking about the church. We were growing in social media as well. So we were fighting a devil in social media, correct? So that also gave room for the sheeps and wolves clothing to arise in social media, and you have to discern who is of God and who is not of God based on how you hear them. Is what they're saying to you correct? Are you discerning it? Do you know them or do you only know them on social media? Have you talked to people? Do you know about their ministries? Do you know about their fruits? Are they growing? Are they expanding? Are things happening? Or are they looked at in a whole different light at this point? Look at what they lost and what are they gaining now? If you knew them before and you know them after. Because that's going to lead us into this. And that's where I want you to be right now. I want you to be at that cross. I want you to be at that fence. I want you to be at that pathway right now in your life. That you have a perspective on how you can look at what comes next for you. So what I'm going to read to you absolutely came from God. I know where it's at for me personally. I do not know what this means for you personally. But you do. And that's between you and God. So when I read this, you are either at a point of receiving it because you're there in your journey, or this is not yet for you, or you've already seen this and you're going, she's on the right path. She's talking about the right thing. She's legit. I know where she's going with this. Do you understand? He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Do you understand where this goes now? There are some people who are already at the tomorrow. There are some people who are already ahead and are prophesying and are telling you what is coming next, depending on whether you're ready to receive it and depending on whether or not your heart is aligning with God's will. And there are people who are going to give you warnings and they're going to tell you the dangers of things that are coming, because God did that in the Bible as well. He told us about the dangers that are coming. If you read Revelations, he's talking about the dangers that are coming. That does not make him an unloving God. That does not make him that he's punishing us. That is not how this works. That's not the God we serve. But depending on how you grew up, depending on how you saw your authority, depending on how you saw your loved ones in your life, depends on the perspective on how you read the Bible. Depends on the perspective on how you see people in your life. So take what I tell you and let it resonate for you wherever you're at in your journey, okay? But if you know God, and you know your Bible, and you've been stuck, and you're going, I'm living in confusion, and I don't know which way to go, and I don't know what's next, and I don't know what's supposed to happen. You're living in a fear of the unknown. Because you're at a point in your journey that you know where you've been, you kind of know what's supposed to happen next, but you're sitting in your crossroads, you're sitting at your cross, you're sitting at your path going, if I let this go, I don't know if I am ready for what's coming, and I'm not sure that I even am worthy of what God has for me. But I have to go into that looking at this differently if I am a child of God. Because I have a purpose, I have a destiny. There is something more to this, right? So bear with me as I'm growing and I'm learning, and I am also learning to humble myself through this process, but find a strength and a boldness to go with God in a way that many people may not understand. And I hope you do understand that and that makes sense going into what I'm about to read. You ready? Because God's exciting. God is doing amazing things as always. I cannot wait to see what he does next in this journey. I think that tattoos of the heart will become a ministry, and God is positioning something amazing in this. The harvest and wealth transfer is coming. God is realizing something, and a new door is opening for many of us. I truly believe God is positioning many of us for what is next. And we all feel it's big, and in the unknown we are anticipating of God and in fear of it at the same time. Too good to be true, or I don't deserve what's next. God doesn't fail, and he keeps his promises. We are not to give up, but continue to be the light, and Jesus has already shown us the way. We are learning, growing, healing, and in awe every step of the way. Worshiping through it all and loving even when we don't receive it. It's a weird place to be in when you are at the cross or the path, and you have a fork in the road, and you are not sure you will make the right choices. You understand the assignment, yet you question the messenger. Ask yourself, has God ever not kept his promises yet? And the unknown looks good now, doesn't it? This is where God has all the glory. Where are you at in the Lord's Prayer? I talk about the Lord's Prayer a lot on my Facebook. And if you read the Lord's Prayer word for word, and you dissect the Lord's Prayer, there are so many layers and so many meanings to that prayer, depending on where you're at in your journey, and depending on how big you're willing to look at that prayer. The same way as how big you're willing to look at the Bible. I learned the Lord's Prayer as a song in church growing up. My parents didn't go to church, but my dad worked for a school, and the school would have church in their gym. And my dad got paid extra on the side to set up the church. So he'd set up the chairs and everything, and so he would do that on Sundays. Well, then he would hang out in a room and watch TV while they're doing service, and then when service was over, he would go and he would take all the chairs down. Well, every once in a while I would go with my dad, and when I started to go with my dad, I started to attend the church. My father was a Catholic, and he wasn't a believer in any of this kind of stuff, yet some way God used that to get me into the church. And that's where I met a lot of people, and I have youth group, and I have a lot of people on my Facebook page that I still know from church, that I grew up in. But we all learned the Lord's Prayer, and we heard it as a song. I'm not going to sing it because I'm not a singer. I'm not going to do that to myself. I'm not going to embarrass myself like that. But the song is really cool, and I kind of wish that there was more instruments to it. Like, it's a really cool, it's kind of like putting psalms to music. Well, the Lord's Prayer got put to music at some point, and it was really cool to me. And, you know, when you think about the Lord's Prayer and you read it and you say it, it should bring you to tears. When you've gone through what you've been through in your life and you look at the Lord's Prayer on so many different levels, and you can look at the Lord's Prayer as to what's coming as well, because He's in the tomorrow. So you know that all of your things are going to be met. You know that you're going to come across someone that you're going to have to forgive. You know that you know what's coming based on the Lord's Prayer. But there's certain parts of the Lord's Prayer that maybe you're at in your life. I want to be at the glory part of the Lord's Prayer, y'all. I want to be somewhere different with Him now. I want to look at something completely different with Him. I want to go into that with an expectation that I've never had. I want to go into that with fun and excitement and a childlike eyes for God. I want to be excited. And this is where a Sagittarius can do that. We are spontaneous. We're the wild children. We will go into the unknown. But we will ground ourselves in nature. We will ground ourselves around, I talk about that. And people who know me, I'm drawn to animals. Animals are drawn, they come to the light. They come to good people. They know God. This is why dogs are really, really good to have, because a dog can tell you when somebody is good or somebody is bad. A dog can feel you. A snake can feel you. Animals can feel you. An animal will react off of their fear. This is where being the alpha in a pack, this is where being a leader comes in. This is where, if you watch animals, look at wolves, look at dogs, they have a language of their own. Someone is the alpha. Someone always has to be the alpha. Somebody always has to be in charge. God is our alpha. He's the alpha and He is the omega. He's the leader of our pack. Sometimes when you have dogs, you have to speak in a dog's language. And so you kind of have to come and be like, you're not in control. When I tell you to sit, you're going to sit. Sometimes you have to be stern and you have to give commands and you have to tell a dog to sit and but then you also love your dog and you love them and you give them loves and you give them treats when they do it right. And then they'll be more willing to want to learn, and they know that you're doing it from love and not from fear, and they don't have to have their tail between their legs every time that you come up to them, and they don't hover because they're not scared. As a child, what happens when we get abused? We have to protect ourselves because there's no one else there to protect us, right? We go in survival mode. A lot of animals are out in the wild and they're living in survival mode, trying to feed, yet not be eaten. Does that make sense? How do we survive in this world and not be eaten up? Sometimes you gotta put on your armor. Sometimes you've gotta go into battle. Sometimes you gotta change up some things, right? You gotta go through the pain. You gotta go through something in order to get to the other side, to get to the harvest, to get to the good, to get to the light, you gotta go through the dark to get to the light. I mean, come on, you guys, is this all starting to make sense? This is not coming from an egotistical place. This is coming with an expectation of who God is and aligning it of how many people we can start helping and healing and giving them a different perspective of God and helping them and opening the doors to the church the correct way. We are going into a new world. We are going into a new era. We are also going into a new depression. Look back in history. Look at the wars. But people survived it. They got through it, depending on how they looked at it. Depending on where they lived, depending on their resources, depending on what was available to them. This is incredible because I was going to post this morning on my Facebook and God said not to post it. And now I know why. Because he wanted me to speak it. Let's go a little bit further as far as what's happening in the world. I cannot believe this is happening, you guys. This is really happening in real life and I go, holy cow. We opened up the borders. And we let in illegals to take our benefits. And they are handing them checks and saying, vote for me. Vote for me. If you vote for me, we will take care of you. If you vote for me, we'll put a roof over your head. If you vote for me, we will give you money every month. If you vote for me, they're doing this, right? They're enticing people with money to come into our country and take our benefits. This is coming from a single mom who worked her ass off to even get state assistance. Do you know how much documentation we had to prove and give, and how much we had to go to somebody and say, hey, I need proof that I rent from you, and then you have to get them involved in something they don't want to be involved in, and you're already embarrassed that you have to get money from the state, so you don't want everybody knowing that you had to get money from the state. So you are trying to do it all on your own and trying to figure it all up on your own. Meanwhile, other people are getting benefits left and right. And if you go further with CPS is taking kids out of their homes when they're not in danger, but keeping them with people who are on drugs or who are on meth or who are in an unsafe environment, but you're giving them their kids, but you're taking kids away from other people? Do you see how deep we can go with this, all you guys? Do you see how it's really hard to hold on to the good when you see the bad at the same time? And you see what's happening in this country, and you see how China is taking over land in our country? The slow leak has already started. But people like me who want to buy land, it's almost going to be impossible by the time I'm even financially able to get to that point. But I know God. And I know that God's going to align whatever needs to be aligned. And so I'm going to have to watch this. I'm going to have to go through this. I'm going to have to be angry. I'm going to have to be upset with our government. I'm going to have to see what's happening. And I'm going to have to go, something has to change because the perspective on this is unreal to me. I talked about in my last video, and you can say whatever you want because I don't really care anymore. You all can bash me. You all can you can attack me. You can say whatever you want because I know who God is. And I know exactly what I'm saying, and what I'm saying is true. Because if you go back to my video and I talk about a seed being planted and having a baby, Depending on your perspective of you having that child, maybe you were raped, or maybe you were this, or maybe you were that. I don't know. I don't know your journey, and I don't know your story. And so maybe there's where laws come in that there has to be certain circumstances in order to have an abortion. And we're going to have to go back to the basics of abortion and what is legally okay to have an abortion. Because when you plant a freaking seed, it has a heartbeat. So let's start there. It is not a person. It is a seed that has a heartbeat. It's alive already. So now you want to approve abortion when you see a form and a figure of a body. Because when you first saw it, it was a seed, so you said, it's okay, it's only a seed. Let's wait till it grows a little bit more. Let's wait till we really see it's a human, because then we can determine that that's really an abortion. That's your mindset? Let's go a little bit deeper. You're a doctor, and you have to now pronounce somebody dead. How do you know that somebody has died? Their heart stops beating. Let that sink into you a little bit differently. Let your perspective on something be a little bit different. I do not believe in abortion, but I do believe that in some instances, depending on where people are at in their lives, abortion should possibly maybe be legal to help out a lot of other people that it could affect. So I do believe that it is a person's body and it is a person's belief, and it is okay for them to have abortions under certain circumstances. But it is not okay to have an abortion because you didn't put a condom on and you don't think that you're ready for something. And this is what I told my daughter, who's 19, who is going through something that a lot of people on my Facebook know about, that I will share at one point when I talk to my daughter more about going public with it. But no, she did not have an abortion. But she's reaping what she sowed in a different way. So understand that I see both sides. This is where laws have got to be changed, and we have to start listening to one another. You cannot just abort a baby when you see a body and you see a form. It has a heartbeat. It's already breathing. It's already alive. A plant is alive as soon as you see it sprout, right? That seed is already planted. The soil is already going. The water is already coming. It's already being watered. So who are you to determine that makes that okay to get rid of it? We all have to come to a better understanding, don't we? We have to come to a level of mental capacity to understand what's happening in that moment. This is where maybe you have the child, but you're not ready to be a mom, so you give it up for you give it up for an adoption for people who can't have kids. Because that's a blessing to them. Maybe you're just not ready in your journey, but having an abortion doesn't have to be the answer. There are many other answers you can have in this. Nobody is saying that it's wrong and you shouldn't have an abortion, that you should have to raise that child whether you want to or not. You have options. We all have choices. So I'm going to look at my choice of where I'm at in my journey right now, and I'm at the fork in the road of not knowing what's next, but I kind of do because I have other things in my journal, and I'm going, how am I going to know that it's God? And God goes, you will, without a doubt, know that it is of me, because you will not be living in a state of confusion, because I am not the maker of confusion. So when you come to the fork, you will without a doubt know that it's me, because you are being tested on your discernment. I'm going to test you to know if you know, and can you recognize the sheep's in wolf clothing of what's coming next? Can you honestly with your heart, open your heart and understand what forgiveness looks like? But maybe there's a forgiveness that needs to happen, but it's not a door that you need to go through. Maybe I have a different door for you, but I've got to close this chapter in your life. We've got to shut this door down with or without an apology. Can you just forgive and let the new door open? Understand that's where I'm at in my journey of letting go of expectations, letting go of people, letting go of some organizations, letting go of some things that no longer serve me. I am going into an unknown with an expectation that God is going to align people in my life to teach me something so that I can further my growth, maybe physically, mentally, and spiritually, or one or the other. But those people are going to align in my life for different reasons and for different purposes in my life. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that I will remain in Hawkins. I'm going to go further somewhere else outside of Hawkins. I don't know. You guys understand that, right? I don't know where or when or how the land that I hope to have one day, where it's going to be, how it's going. I don't know any of that. But I know God. And I know that if I keep going forward, I know that if I keep doing the work, I know that if I keep helping, I know that if I keep giving in any way, shape, or form that I can, wherever I'm at in my journey, it'll all come back and be restored, maybe better than it was before, right? But how am I going to know that if I don't keep going? So judge me. Say this girl is crazy and here she is listening to God and she's talking all this stuff again and then she's doing this and but if you know me, you know where my heart is in this. You know me enough to know that if God decides to do some financial wealth in that a lot of people are going to be financially wealthy in that. There's no stinginess in that. There's no control in that. There's no nothing in that. That is all God lining up whatever it is. But I'm not going into the expectation of doing this of being rich in money. I'm doing the expectation of going this being rich in love, being rich with helping people, being rich with healing people, being rich with using my gifts differently to help others. And however that looks to God, it looks because, maybe that's where traveling comes in. And I've said that I want to travel, so maybe I will be traveling, and joining ministries and helping others and doing something. I don't know where God is going with any of this. But I know that I'm not going to limit him. I know that I have been positioned in my life the way that I have of living a very simple life where if I have to get up and go, I get up and go. But if God has another plan for that on how I get up and go or where I get up and go, or do I get up and go, or am I growing a seed here and is something growing here? I don't know. But you hear about many people who say, God said we were moving from this state to this state and we went. God told me I was coming to Texas and it looked nothing like we thought it was going to look. Now did it? The reason I came to Texas is not the outcome of why I'm in Texas. I'm living proof of that. God will align in the journey. Some people come back around. Some people don't come back around. Some people go with you. Some people don't go with you. It just depends. But God is saying to you, it's not following unless you're letting me lead. And I have a friend who has this plaque, and I said to her, of everything that you have in your life, if you ever pass away, that's all I want. It's this little stone plaque that she has in her kitchen. And every time I go there, I just stare at it, and it says, "Dear child, it's It's not following unless you let me lead. Love, God. And I posted that on my Facebook this past week. I'm letting God lead. I'm putting in a prayer. I'm manifesting what I would like it to be. I'm asking God to align with his heart and his purpose. As long as it's for others, as long as my heart is aligning correctly, as long as I'm doing it for the right reasons, then God will provide however that looks. That's the expectation of God, you guys. That's the love of Christ. That's understanding Jesus and what he sacrificed for. That's understanding that our sins have really honestly have been forgiven, and we need to look at things completely different now. We have to stop living in our past, and we have to stop looking at how we screwed up and when we screwed up, and realizing that we can make a difference now because we have other people that are watching us. We have our children who are trying to raise our grandchildren. Or we are raising our grandchildren because of the mistakes of our children. Or we are doing, you get what I'm saying? But there are ways to help without doing it. I'm not helping my 19-year-old by doing it for her. I'm helping her by helping her see different perspectives of a 19-year-old's mind and maturing her differently on how she's looking at things because she went into an adult world with an immature mind. And so I'm not punishing her for that. I'm not making her continue to have to go through hoops and do all kinds of things that are going to exhaust her and are going to cause more confusion and aren't really going to be for her better and going to be for her good. So if I can just guide her differently in the way that she words herself, if I can guide her differently in finding a strength that she never had, if I can guide her differently in seeing things that are not about her, but looking at them bigger and how is it going to affect her son in the long run, then she's going to learn how to communicate with other people who are blocking her from her son. Because she will be able to communicate and use her words in a more mature manner that's going to make them stop and think about the choices that they're making, because the next move is going to be on them on how they respond to that. Because then she no longer has to carry guilt of saying, I tried, but, and I can go, you absolutely tried, and you tried the correct way, so now let God take care of the rest. You did what you were supposed to do. You just don't have the outcome that you want right now. But there's a reason for that. Accept the process, accept where you're at, accept what happened, but let's move forward looking at it differently on how do we save this, because Weston is so much younger that he's not going to remember this. You can still save this, no matter what it looks like right now, no matter the setbacks that are in front of you, no matter the people that are telling you that you can't. Change your perspective and go, watch me. I'm going to show you how I can, but you got to work with me. And she needs guidance in doing that. She needs help and somebody showing her the mature way to do something. Who better than someone older and wiser? I have older and wiser people that are helping me along this journey, you guys, spiritually. And helping me see things in a worldly way on how do I proceed differently. And then when I share my heart on what I think God is showing me versus what you see worldly, it's kind of like seeing somebody in their shell, but knowing their heart and going, I have faith that God can do this. But I had to logically go, is that for my good? Am I doing this for the right reasons, or am I holding on to something that I'm supposed to be letting go? And I have people guiding me in that along my way as well. Everything that I am telling you, we've all heard. Everything that I'm telling you has biblical meaning. Everything that I'm telling you aligns with God so far. But I come to you in a very vulnerable, humble place of understanding who I am in this journey as God is aligning and showing us how to open our eyes and see him differently. And I'm trying to do that in a humble manner where we are willing to see God in a different view that we've never had, and understanding what glory of God looks like at different levels. What a miracle really looks like versus a blessing. Or a lesson and a blessing versus a blessing and a miracle versus a miracle and the glory. But wherever you're at in your journey is the wording that you use in that. And I posted about this. Depending on the wording that you learn is a king and a queen and a leader and a supervisor and a manager and a father and a mother. There are and so when you look at that, is that honor? Is that respect? Is that integrity? Is that trust? Is that loyalty? Do you see the wording that's being used depends on the quote unquote ranking in which you see somebody, the title in which you respect somebody? But this is where God says we shouldn't have titles. This is where God says we should respect all. It's the wording that you use where you're at, and the language in which you speak to somebody depends on the outcome on how you are perceived and how you perceive them. God, does that make sense? That is so deep, you all. I had no idea. I'm an hour into this. I just came on to read this and all of this flowed. I'm stopping. I'm ending this. I love you all. I could go on for hours and hours. I've got to end this somewhere. We're already an hour in. God bless you. I love you all. I am praying that expectations of God is opening up in a whole new way for all of us, because we're about to be wowed. And I know that. And I am so excited to go into this with childlike eyes and just be like, let's go, God. Let's go, God. All right. I love you. Bye.